So Instafab is a structural steel fabrication company, and we also do field installation and erection. So we work right now focusing on general contractors in the commercial real estate business. And we also serve other specialty subcontractors like brick masons who may need ledgers or something to support the bridge, the brickwork on the exterior of the buildings and such. We do seismic upgrades, and we serve industrial companies as well that might need tooling or special products manufactured for them.
Welcome to Business Ninjas, brought to you by WriteForMe, where you'll hear from business leaders who are out there growing their business and slaying it every day. Learn from the masters. Let's get started.
Welcome to another episode of Business Ninjas. I'm here with Brandi Martin, who's President and CEO of Instafab. Hey, Brandi, how's it going?
Going well.
Good. Tell me a little bit about yourself and Instafab.
Yeah, so Instafab is a structural steel fabrication company, and we also do field installation and erection, located here in Oregon, and we serve Southwest Washington as well.
Great. Tell me a little bit more. Tell me about the business and a little bit about some of the engagements that you work on, just to kind of give everybody who's listening a feel for what you do a little bit more.
Yeah, you bet. So I have been with the company, it'll be 1 year next month. And when I stepped in, we were kind of in a growth period, right? We were at this pivotal point between being kind of in the startup method of things and not quite a mature company, though the company's been in existence for almost 40 years. So I've been focusing on, prepping us and structuring us for that next growth period. So we work right now focusing on general contractors in the commercial real estate business. And we also serve other specialty subcontractors like brick masons who may need ledgers or something to support the bridge, the brickwork on the exterior of the buildings and such. We do seismic upgrades, and we serve industrial companies as well that might need tooling or special products manufactured for them.
Cool. Interesting. And so, tell me sort of the end-to-end process for how a project starts, and at what point do you get involved in the project? There's obviously a lot of planning that goes into anything that you're going to build, especially the size that you're talking about. So tell me a little bit about the size of the projects that you work on, and then when you get involved and what that looks like for the full engagement.
Right. So in the past, we've taken on anything from a couple $100 on up to $5 million. We've recently changed our strategy a little bit because we have so much business that we just can't service everybody the same. Big projects require a lot more work for project management versus the smaller projects, which require equal amount of work, but maybe not as much payoff for us. So we've shifted away a little bit on taking larger scope projects. And if we are not able to service that customer, rather than saying, sorry, hey, we don't want your business, we actually will refer them to another a competitor of ours who we view more as partners in our industry. So by the time we come into the project, it's already been engineered. They already have plans. The contractor has been working with an owner, and they're identifying people to take portions of the project. So steel scope, generally a general contractor isn't super experienced. They're not an expert in steel and how that's managed. So we'll come in and we'll fabricate their embeds to help with their concrete. We'll wait a little while, and once they start getting into the structure portions, then we'll provide beams and canopies or whatever structural components they're needing. As part of that process, typically we have architectural and engineered plans provided to us, but not shop plans. And shop plans are really necessary so that we understand and direct our team how to actually construct these pieces, because it's a little bit different than the actual general plans. So we'll engage our engineering team and our detailers to provide those, and then we go back and forth with our customer. They'll give their approval, and once we have that approval, we are off to the races and we start fabrication. And if we have the installation component of the project, once we've had everything fabricated, we'll go out and install it for the customer as well. So it was really just this end-to-end, sorry, not to cut you off, I'm sorry, but it's this end-to-end project management, I think, is the real value of what we provide to our customers, is that you don't have to be an expert. We'll coach you along the way, and we'll take that scope from you, and we'll manage the steps that are necessary.
So it's going to be a big relief to, especially a large project. And if there are areas that somebody's not an expert at, like steel fabrication, that you can step in and provide that kind of support for them.
Absolutely, especially when I think they're dealing with a lot of different suppliers and vendors. Typically with steel, there's not a lot of companies that are out there that will do both fabrication and installation. So historically, that's two different suppliers or two different relationships that you have to manage.
Yeah.
We've got project managers on our customer side that already have a ton they're dealing with. So by collapsing that into one relationship, I think that really helps them.
That's a unique benefit, actually. It's interesting that you're doing both the manufacturing and the installation, because having those two different groups, oftentimes that's where left hand doesn't talk to the right hand, and then you get into installation mode and it's not manufactured properly. Then that's what causes delays, and then there's a cascading effect downstream from there. So, tell me a little bit about the planning part of this up front, because manufacturing it, you have to have your specs dialed in at that point. Double click on that for me a little bit. Tell me a little bit about what that process is like.
Really, our specifications and everything is provided to us up front. So it's just a matter of like confirming it with the customer, making sure that we understand exactly what we're what they're wanting us to provide to them. And then we hand it over to our engineers and our detailers who go through all of the plans and all the information. And if they have any questions, they'll ping us. They'll come back to us for answers. And so we're kind of the middle person, go between acting with our customers like, hey, this question came up. Can you add some clarification? That's sometimes a very iterative process, because sometimes they have to go back to the drawing board and engage their engineers or their architects. But once they settle on, hey, here's all the answers that you need, and our detailers and engineers believe they have everything they need to provide the plans, then it's pretty easy handing everything over to us at that point.
Right.
Internally, a lot of the planning also involved is not only understand like pre-construction and understanding the plans themselves, but timing and scheduling, when we're going to order things. We don't want to order materials too soon if it's just going to sit around and we're not going to do anything with it. And if there's a cost savings there with waiting, we want to make sure that we're aware of that as well. So scheduling and understanding sequencing of how we're putting certain components and parts into the field for our customers, it is a critical part of our process as well. And it requires a ton of communication with our customer, but I think it really helps enhance a polished product in the end.
Yeah, I love that. And how much lead time does it take to manufacture? I don't really know much about the steel manufacturing process, so I find it fascinating. Talk to me a little bit about the timeline so that you do nail it right in the sequence of the timeline.
It really depends. The way we had done it in the past is very different. We would just try to just crank it all out. Now we're very strategic and methodical in how we are issuing things to our shop. And the way that we're structuring it is we're breaking it down into smaller components that are able to be produced in a 2-week time span. That way, 2 weeks, we have lead time things fabricated. We're sending them out to the field and we're restarting that process again. So we have this continual funnel of product going out to the field and to our customers.
Very cool. It sounds almost on demand.
Yes, kind of, right? Just in time almost.
Right. That's awesome. That's a lot. What a great innovation in the construction space. Tell me a little bit about the company and how did the company start and how are you growing it? Sounds like you're in a growth inflection phase right now. Everybody's always interested in how people are growing their businesses. What are some of the drivers for you?
I think we have a pretty unique story here, and the alignment, I think, is kind of really beautiful if we take a step back and think about what we're doing today versus what the founder did when he started this company. So way back when, our founder, Bruce, he started this company, he had already been in like a different industry at the time. He had dabbled a little bit in construction, but the way he told the story to me was that he didn't like the mud. Construction's dirty. He loves the building component, but he wasn't really thrilled with getting dirty at the time. So he went into a manufacturing facility and to service one of his clients, and he had seen the conveyors up ahead, and he had seen people, building things. And he's like, man, this is exactly what I love about construction, but there's no mud. And so being really interested in this, sharp man, brilliant man, he started moonlighting. In addition to his full-time job, he took on a job at this facility, or in that industry. I don't know if it was the same facility. And he went through every single job. He learned end to end how to do everything until he got up to the estimating portion. And then at that point, he decided, I think I can do this on my own. And he split up and formed his own company. I believe the company started in his garage. And then they had a facility down in Portland and eventually landed up in Vancouver, where we are today. But the thing that always drove his passion and the thing that he's always instilled in this company is that we act with integrity, we're transparent, good communicators, and we act like partners to our customers. That's his intention. And I think that there's some kind of beauty in him saying that there was no mud, and that's what he liked about manufacturing, because that's exactly how he deals with his customers, or he has in the relationships in the past. There is no mud. Everything is clear. He's honest with you. And he instilled grit in the company as well, which are things when I came in about a year ago that I saw was already existing in the culture. And we just dusted those things off and really brought them to life. In 2021, Bruce decided he was going to retire. People do that, right? But he has a fierce appreciation and like affection for his team and their loyalty. And I don't think he takes that lightly. So rather than just shutting down the company, he found another company called Team Shares that converts retiring businesses to employee ownership. That way that everybody still had a job and, the company would go on, which I think was very admirable. So that's what brought me in last year, is to take over that leadership, allow Bruce to go finally take on his well-deserved retirement and, really lead this employee-owned company to the next step in his life cycle.
I love that. That's such a great story, and it's true entrepreneurship. And now on his exit, leading with employee ownership in the company, that's got to be transformational for the employees to now own a piece of the company and be part of it. How has that affected the day-to-day in the company since you put those kinds of policies in place?
It was slow moving at first. I think you hear horror stories about employee ownership, like ESOP models and such, those stories exist out there. We were a little bit different than that. So starting with this re-education of the team was really critical of, hey, you do have ownership, you really do get dividends, and this can be a retirement, and everything that you do during your day-to-day operation, whatever role you own, can make a difference to the company, and ultimately it puts money back in your pocket. So we went through a series of training on how to be an investor, how to read finances, and just really understand how they fit into the overall picture. And I think that started to really take life probably last winter, where people understood that and were getting excited about the changes. We also had to come in and it was a big culture change. There was some toxicity that was there. We had to kind of wean that out and make sure that we had everybody that was living by the same core principles of the company, being in the right place, right seat of the company. And then we had to modify also our operations to make sure it's more efficient. We were struggling. We just had a ton of work all at one time that hit as a pent up demand from the COVID period, and they were struggling with that. So I think simultaneously fixing those operational issues to help build success went a long ways. And I think building faith in the employees too, that it's not just you to service upper leadership or a board or just the customers, but we're here to help you make your job easier too. And at the end of the day, you're going to be able to see a piece of this as well when it comes back. And we've been successful with it.
Yeah, it sounds like a platform for growth is what you're building in a number of ways. You're helping your clients grow and their businesses, and then you're growing as a company because of the demand that you're seeing, and then the employee growth that happens from that. So, getting everybody aligned in the same direction is it's a challenge at first, but it really starts to gain momentum as you lean into it.
I think it's empowering, absolutely. And I think it kind of highlights the shift in leadership, right? Where your employee owners are part owners, but it's like dealing with volunteers sometimes, right? So you have to treat them very differently than you would maybe other companies or other leaders might. So I'm more focused on making sure that we're empowering them, that they have a voice at the table, because I don't know all the answers. My leadership team don't have all the answers. The important information really sits at the people doing these things, these functions, right? So yeah, it's a really eye-opening experience, the difference in leadership style that's involved.
It's really interesting. It's sort of like being a private company, but having a public company kind of transparency and level of conversation with your shareholders.
Yes, and blended. And our employees are our shareholders. So my duty to both employees and shareholder are one and the same, which makes it nice.
That's very cool. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk to me about the business side of the company. How do you generate revenue? Where do you see growth in the business from here?
Yeah. So we're at a pivot point with that as well. So usually we get requests for bids from customers who are interested in they need steel. And in the past, that's always been customers coming to us. They have, experience with us. They've heard from other project managers or other companies that we exist. But we're also, at this point, we are pivoting to we're going out and looking for business. So partnership is a huge component of that. I want to make sure that we're building good relationships with our customers so they keep returning and that referrals are being given. And when people are saying, hey, I don't know where to get steel, because this is a very fractured market, and we're the first name that comes up. But also being present in the community, just top of mind awareness, right? Being in the places and in part of the associations that our customers would exist. We're not in a salesy standpoint, but building those partnerships and giving kind of counsel if they need it or recommendations if they just need a brain to pick, but maybe don't, have business for us at the time. That's sort of where we're looking to develop, kind of getting more traction and getting more business our way, just getting our name out there.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot of thought leadership can be shared with your community, with associations like you're mentioning, with their clients, with prospects that are looking towards their next project and they're budgeting it. And they're saying, we're going to do this, but it's still early days. They need to figure out who their partners are going to be in that.
Right. And I think what's interesting to me is if you Google steel provider, steel fabrication, or steel installation, very few things come up, right? There isn't this active marketing effort that's going out there. And so I think that there's a lot to gain as well, just by spreading brand awareness digitally. Because I don't know about you, but I assume other construction companies are like me, looking for a vendor. They're going to Google, right? Or they're going on their phone, just looking up what's out there. So I'm hoping that we can start to fill that space too and make sure that we're showing up when people are searching.
That's great. Geographically, where do you do your projects? Where are they?
We are located in Vancouver. And so we have been able to service as far north as 4 hours north of us and then 4 hours south. And then recently we've been expanding to be able to cover the entire state of Washington, the entire state of Oregon, and we are now looking into California as well.
Wonderful. That's exciting. Tell me a little bit about your background. How did you get involved in the company?
Yeah, it's a good question too. My background is a little bit varied and a little diverse. And I'll tell you, I used to be pretty embarrassed or a little bit ashamed about that because I was surrounded by all these people who specialized. They found one thing they loved and they drilled down and became experts in it. And mine was a little bit different. I wanted to know a little bit of everything. And so my background really did dabble in a lot of different things, but I honed in until I felt like I mastered it and then moved on to the next thing, right? So I wouldn't say I'm a jack of all trades, but I know a lot of different things. I started my career in IT, and I worked in a data center for a pretty large global corporation in the education industry. And they, unfortunately, smart business move, but they outsourced my department. So I chose to go back to school for my degree. And while I was working, while I was going to school, I was working full-time at a pub and restaurant. And that's really where I cut my teeth, I think, in the business industry and kind of forged my path here. I climbed the rungs pretty quickly and helping manage the restaurant, moved on to their corporate office. I started as an accounting assistant in that corporate office. And then eventually I quickly went up to the executive assistant for the CEO of the company. And then from there, I branched off into focusing on operations until I was leading operations and strategy over the entire portfolio for this private investment firm. I started to get a little bit restless because I'm all about growth. So I feel like if I'm not moving, if I'm not growing, what's next? I don't like to stagnate. I picked up several certifications and I taught myself, I thought, the bulk of what I could do. So I started to volunteer, like with the American Marketing Association here in Portland and some other associations as well. And then I decided to go pursue my MBA. And so I ended up landing on the executive MBA program with University of Oregon. Highly recommend, phenomenal program. And that's when I started to realize that I can go. I mean, I always kind of pictured myself as maybe being second in command, like leading operations, like in a C-level position. But I was like, man, I do not want to be a CEO. I don't want to be the one person in charge of everything. That program taught me that I could do it. Like I had the capacity to do it. I served as president in the associations, did very well in that. And so I built a lot of confidence and decided that the company I was in probably didn't meet the needs that I was growing into. So I was wanting something more human-centered, something that had more impact in society. And so I came across the position with Instafab, and I read through the description, which is not like me. Usually I don't go looking for things that I've not already been experienced in. I was like, man, I've done all these things. I am qualified for this, I think. So I applied, and here I am. I mean, I went through a series of different interviews and ended up getting it. So took a risk.
Exciting path. That's great. It's, and what's really interesting about that is taking some of these, your background and some of the more modern, I would say, ways of approaching business and bringing it to the construction space, which typically isn't a modern space, so to speak, but has so much opportunity to grow into a modern space where it can become a leader. And it sounds like you're going through that sort of like a digital transformation within the business as well.
Absolutely. It's critical, right? You always got to have your eye on where are we going to be in 10 years? And do I have the tools to get me there now? And am I putting these in place? I think when I worked in my last company, I'd been there like 12 years. I say that I was like construction adjacent. I wasn't leading construction projects, but I was the customer being serviced. And I think that also adds a nice complement to what I'm doing now as leading a subcontractor, is understanding exactly what customers who are in development or they're, in commercial real estate, what they're looking for and what they're needing. And I think I can just kind of bridge that gap in speaking that same language that they have. So I think that's been pretty beneficial as well.
Very cool. That's exciting. I guess my last question for you here is, if you were to forecast out a year from now, what would you like to be celebrating?
That's a good question.
Right.
Certainly I would like to see us being, more profitable than we've been in the past. I think ultimately it boils down to wanting to make sure that my employees are receiving dividends and that we're servicing our customers well. So survey feedback, I would love to see a strong reputation, and for our employees, just really being able to highlight and show the power of employee ownership and what that can do for them. I think everything else, profitability, gross at revenue, that'll all come from those successes. But yeah, I think that's where I'd love to what I'd love to be celebrating is next year. So
great area to focus on. I love it. Well, congratulations, Brandi. Sounds really exciting. And I'm excited to follow Instafab going forward here.
Thank you, Andy. Thanks for having me.